Hi, everyone. The clock's already starting, so I'm sure everyone's caffeinated. If you're not, you're going to get a shot of Kyle Martino right now, and I will get us all excited, especially when this is a really important time, but a really important place to be in. I'm really honored that Tom Ferry and the Aspen Institute put together this event and welcomed me to come and be a part of this conversation. I kind of think of these summits as idea and innovation festivals. You know, it's an opportunity to celebrate what's being done, and some of the conversations already have been amazing. Some of the ideas, I'm bummed I missed some of them yesterday, but luckily there are links to go check it out. But for me, I'm so committed and involved in sport for social justice, and at this inflection point, I think we have to really understand that there are many issues of consequence facing kids these days, but the challenge of doing it without sport is a scary one. I can talk from personal experience, not to get too deep too early, but I realized last few years that something was going on in my life that I didn't truly understand, and now I understand that I've lived with depression, and without sport, I don't think there was a way to face that challenge with such optimism, with such belief that I have a support structure, and a sort of a hard wiring to understand that I can control my fulfillment and what I want to get out of life. And all of that came through being a kid and finding play. I mean, that's ultimately why we're here. You know, all these sports, and it was an incredible video talking about Norway, what they're doing, and the smiles on the kids' faces, the enjoyment. Really what sport is sports connection. You know, sport should be our time where there's diametric opposition in so many different parts of life, but this last bastion of looking up and connecting with someone else and finding what you're capable of and doing it with people who are enjoying a similar experience. It's too rare a thing right now. And I ran for U.S. soccer president last year, ostensibly because I was worried about the health of our game and our men failing to qualify for the World Cup, our women not being treated equal, not being treated like the world-class players and World Cup champions that they are. I thought that I was there to try and figure out what's wrong with this pyramid, how do we restructure things? And it was a dear friend of mine who I'm lucky to call a friend because she's one of the most impressive people I've ever met, Mia Hamm, who during one of our strategy sessions woke me up and helped me realize in a group of 25 people that scan World Cup winners down to administrators when we were trying to figure out the plan, she said, "Can I just stop for a second? The epidemic I'm worried about is kids aren't having fun anymore." And everyone was just dead quiet. Everyone just sat there, and it gives me chills to say it now. I mean, here is a legend that's not worried about which World Cup we're going to win next, where's the next talent coming from. She said, "I'm coaching under 9 girls, and these kids aren't having fun anymore." And I'm terrified because this is becoming a health and wellness epidemic. And I'm really excited to be on this panel with 2 groups doing so much to try to help sport through their foundations. And I'll get them up here in a second because I really want you guys to hear what they have to say and what they're up to. But for me, out of that election, I was charged with making sure I used my pulpit and what sport gave to me to get out there and bang the drum for a call to action that it's going to take collaboration to help open up the path for kids to have this incredible, powerful gift of play, of sport, and what it can do for their lives and the trajectory it can put them on. And empowering a kid then empowers the community that they live in. And it lifts all these groups up in situations where we see the true potential if they feel the wind at their back. And sport has a remarkable ability to do that. And if at this point where brand and corporations and social enterprise are intersecting and groups locally are doing amazing things, this is the moment we all have to get together and link arms and say, we can't miss this opportunity to open access and open play for kids so that they don't miss this incredible gift. The idea that sport that's changed my life is turning into a privilege only some can afford rather than a right that everyone has to become a player for life, involved in this game in whatever way they choose to be. that's where we have to wake up and say, we're not going to let that happen. And last thing I'll say is I was in the lobby, even before I got checked in, got to my room, sat down and had 4 amazing conversations with local people doing amazing things. JJ Valles, who's heading up Parks and Rec here, is just an incredible story about coming from a Puerto Rican background where baseball was the big sport, and he found hockey and ended up being an incredible hockey player, and it changed his life and put him on a trajectory where now he's in charge of programs that welcome in at a recreational level more kids than I could imagine a recreational group could facilitate. And the fact that he understands through his experience what happens when you take your experience, you take your privilege of enjoying the game and it changing your life, and passing that down and truly at the grassroots level, welcoming kids into programs. Detroit City FC, a soccer team that had 7,500 people there to play a Mexican professional team the other day, started as a local, sort of community program and grew to what it is. So it's true, you can do this at the grassroots level. And it's one of the reasons I started Over Under Initiative. I push back on this idea that the most blue-collar sport in the world, soccer, is too expensive to play in this country. It's innovation and it's organization that is keeping kids from being able to engage with it at a local level for free. And as chairman of Street Soccer USA, I realized I got to open up this game to everyone. So I started an organization to convert basketball courts to multi-sport spaces, and we have 3 city partners, and we're moving forward. So just really excited to be here and be a part of a panel, and I'm going to do less of the talking now because what Barcelona is doing with their foundation, and Mariona Miret is here. I'm going to bring her up in a second. It's really remarkable, but one of the most important and biggest sports brands on the planet with one of the most impressive revenue sources is chipping off 1% of that to change the lives of kids through their brand and their belief that they should be involved in community. And Dave Egner, who's the CEO of Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation, an amazing legacy to leave behind what should be the most profitable moment in a sports owner's life, selling a team, taking that and understanding that that can be reinvested to make sure that kids have sport in their lives. I'm just honored and humbled to be on the same stage with them, and I want to welcome them up right now. All right, I took up too much of your time, so let me just get right to, and thank you, Dave, and your group for making sure we all get here and doing what you can to keep these conversations going and see where innovation can turn into execution. And you had a big journey here, and we were joking backstage. I'm part of the ownership group of Mallorca, and our teams play against each other in a few weeks, and you have to just take it a little bit easy on us, please. But it's pretty amazing when we find out the success that you have on the field. Barcelona Football Club, one of the biggest brands in the world. Many don't know what they're up to off the field. So help everyone here understand what the foundation is and how it's linked to such a successful, prestigious reputation on the field.
Okay, Football Club Barcelona, we say it's more than a club, and not only by what it achieves at levels of sports, but also since the beginning of the origin of the football club. It's a club owned by more than 140,000 memberships, so it's not owned by a country, by an individual, or by a company. And this makes that the club is has a democracy approach, where all the people has the right to raise the voice and taking the decisions for the club. And I think this is the very important aspect that runs the whole aspects, a part of the sport achievements of the Football Club Barcelona. The foundation was created about 25 years ago, and it has always had the commitment to work to help and support vulnerable communities in Barcelona and the surroundings. But as well, Barça has become a very global brand.
You've been for quite some time, but yeah, it's amazing.
Catalonia area, where Barcelona is based, has around 7-8 million population, and Barça has about more than 300 million social media followers. So you can imagine that the reach that the brand and our players have are very big. That gives us the responsibility as a foundation of such a club to not only work on our local community, but also to work worldwide.
And what is the focus? The impact is huge in terms of, we can all do the calculus of big revenues and a commitment to convert that revenue into social enterprise. What is the focus of the foundation?
The focus of the foundation is the sports for development. So the foundation do not run any program related to technification or competition or to give like some resources for talent sports children. We don't do that.
So not development of players.
No. What we do is we feel that every kid is equal and we have to give the same opportunities to all children. So we give access to sports to all children with special attention to vulnerable children. And we don't run programs where technification is like the main heart of the program. What we do is use the sports as a tool. So we have different methodologies that we have been developing since the last 10 years, where sports has become a channel, but not the goal.
And I remember reading about when you deconstruct the success on the field, 5 stated values. You know, every brand has their brand pillars, and it's our sort of non-negotiables. This is who we are when we take, excuse me, when we take our brand to the marketplace. Do those translate to the foundation side? Is it the same principles?
Yes. Barça values pillars are 5. It's humility, effort, ambition, respect, and teamwork. These values are taught in La Masia, where all our young players learn to be talented.
Don't skip over that. So for those that don't know, La Masia is the Harvard of developing young players. One of the most incredible academies that obviously Messi came through. When you go through La Masia, it is not only an education on how to be the right footballer, it's about being the right person. So you say it with too much humility. It is an incredible, and I've been there and seen that incredible building right in front of that field that some of the greatest players of all time have passed through. So sorry, I had to add that footnote. You say it too humbly.
Thank you. So the 5 values are based in all the work that we do. Even for the staff, we are measured at the end of the year on the 5 values. It's very important for all the work that we do. So the work that we do of the foundation, it's also under the umbrella of the 5 values. And in fact, one of the most used methodologies that we use to run our programs is FootballNet, that is organized, all the sessions are organized under these 5 values.
When we were backstage, you could tell before someone says something that they believe in it. And it's very clear you're passionate about what you're doing. Can you give me an example, and it can be a player, a day. Was there a moment in your work where you said, and you could see, this is the impact. I can see why we're making such a big difference. When do those moments come for you in your job?
Especially when I go to visit the programs and you see the children. Have been working on a refugee program, especially on the immigration crisis in Europe. And when you see children that comes to you and say, I would never thought that somebody would care about me, and would never imagine that Barça would care about me. And when you realize the impact you're doing to this kid, just to give hope. I mean, we believe that our methodologies help on social skills, emotional skills, life skills, because that's what they are meant to. But this hope is the basic, I think, for any human being, and especially a kid that is going through difficult times. Give them some hope is one of the most impact values that I think our work does.
Yeah, there was a story with Street Soccer USA that was started by two amazing people in Charlotte that were homeless overnight because of a tragedy. And 12 years on, I'm fortunate enough to chair their national board and hear these stories. There's a child in the program who's not a child anymore, but came from West Africa. His brother passed away in the terrible situation of trying to get out of West Africa and what they were dealing with. And his first program before he could speak English was a soccer program. He got his first paycheck coaching in that soccer program and just got into Berkeley. And I would imagine that the hope is that Barcelona ends up being at the touch points, at the first level, the first hand up for some of these young kids to get them on a successful path.
That's what we try, but also as a big brand, we have the responsibility to make awareness to the whole world about giving opportunities to everybody and make efforts to avoid social exclusion, to avoid violence. And I think that we have a responsibility on individuals, but also we have a responsibility on making awareness to the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's the interesting point, I think, that we're realizing. And Dave, I want to ask you a question. And in a way, this might be a sort of a mock pitch to a foundation right now. And
you don't get any of those.
yeah. You probably only got 5 backstage. Corporate groups and foundations, those with the means, those with the resources that are tethered to a mission, that care about something, that's where you can cash in a chit and take a brand, take a group that has a message that's linked to either for-profit or not, and use it to leverage a philanthropic situation. So when you hear what Barcelona Foundation are doing, I know Barcelona now is coming to other countries and working with groups here in the States to try and bring their incredible brand to communities. When you hear that about an organization, how do you look at it from your seat as a CEO of a foundation that has an incredible endowment based off the generosity of someone who believed what sport could do to communities, and now in New York and Detroit, you guys are doing these things. How do you look at that, and what's your calculus for figuring out where do we get the most impact with the dollars that we have to spend?
It's a great series of questions, Kyle. I think it comes down to something very simple I learned early on in philanthropy. Don't bet on programs, bet on people. People have values, people have passion. Programs are the result of passionate people, and so when I look at the Barca Foundation and what FC Barcelona's done, it's based on values. It's not based on continuing to be a soccer legacy. It's based on a value system. And if I had any advice for what would be nonprofits or for-profits looking to make a difference, get your values and passion in place first. It's that brand. It's the value of that brand that we're betting on. It's not the program.
And you do more than invest. I kind of, with a little that I know in our time together, finding out more than the article, right? What's behind, because foundations are about values too. You seem to be very hands-on in terms of it's not a sort of a pay and move on. You seem to establish relationships with the groups that you decide to invest in their projects. How do you see your engagement working with the dollars that you put into the marketplace?
Well, we have a great privilege in the fact that we're working in just 16 counties. It gives us, national funders a lot of times have a theory of change, and they go cherry pick out, the 3 or 4 groups nationwide that can actually do the work within their theory of change. Working in 16 counties, we're working with the raw material in those counties, we're working with the belief system of those regions, and if we simply write a check and go away, we've not extended them beyond cash. So in many respects, our job is to make connections. How can we connect Organization A with Organization B, and then maybe even find a way to bring in a national set of experts and theories to try to get them to knit together more. So it's this value of collaboration and teamwork that really is one of the key values of our work as well. Mr. Wilson established this foundation or the concept of the foundation before he passed. This is back to values. You know,
This was one of his children, so to speak.
yeah, he knew what he wanted to do, and but he was just so smart. He said, the world's going to change after I'm gone, and so I'm not going to tell the people what they should do with the money. I'm going to appoint 4 people who knew me, 4 life trustees, and they're going to make the decisions where we spend it and what we spend it on. And the first thing those 4 life trustees did is sit down and talk about Mr. Wilson's values. So we're driven by 5 values. We're driven by innovation, collaboration or teamwork, being outcomes focused, joy, and humility. We could have just walked right into Barcelona and taken a page out of the playbook, but those values drive us, and that collaboration teamwork piece is key in the grant making we make. How are we a part of that team, not just writing a check and going away?
And as a foundation, are you solution? Is the calculus for investment a solution-based strategy that you create internally, or do you field a pitch and say, does this align with what we want to do? I think it's really interesting. Sometimes, foundations have a pretty specific aim, and when we see the size of the challenge in the market now to use sport for social good, we see this with Over-Under Initiative. I started something that I thought was going to be soccer focused because I was really worried about a soccer problem with the drop in participation. And then upon further research, it was a drop in participation across all sports, and very quickly it became a sports neutral solution. And I was fortunate that Adam Silver and other progressive people saw that too. And now even though I'm a diehard soccer guy, I played multiple sports growing up. Do you look at your aim of using the endowment through a vehicle of sports as a totally sports neutral solution for these kids?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So start with the fact that foundations don't do anything. We'd like you all to think we do something. But the reality is we don't do anything. We empower other people. We write checks for other people to do. So the second point is we don't have any money. The funds of the Wilson Foundation, the funds of Barca, are not enough to change a market or change societal thinking. So we've got to work through the raw material that's in community. We have to work with the people working on problems and working to solve them. So when we look at the issues of sports and recreation, it's a vehicle of social and emotional learning that's beyond sports and recreation. It's part of the work we're doing around preparing young people to be productive citizens. It's about the work of workforce. It's about economic development. When we take sports out of the equation, we remove an incredibly important part of social and emotional learning from society. It's one we've taken for granted, and it's one we've let morph into being hyper-competitive instead of one that's about development. So Ann Pringle was one of the parents up here yesterday, and when she described letting her kids play free, not interfering, and letting them facilitate and mediate and solve their own problems, and the bully became the friend, and we've lost that. So this is not about sport, it's about social and emotional learning for us. It's also would then say you don't isolate to sports, and you don't isolate to a single sport, and you don't isolate to the notion of competition. You work on the notion of inclusion. How do we keep including kids more and more in the process and let them play freely? And when appropriate, add coaches to the formula.
Yeah, and that's the thing that worries me is how much free time we had for play and how overprogrammed a lot of these kids have become, where there's 2 things, I think, chasing them out. It's competition where you don't have to teach kids competition. I mean, the most competitive I ever was in my house with my brothers playing to the closet. I mean, to this day, I've played in finals of cups, and it wasn't as intense as playing against my brothers in that living room. We broke a couple chandeliers, but that's a different story.
I have twin daughters. Let me tell you, they are the best of frenemies.
Yeah. I know it's like. We also had a set of boxing gloves, but only one set, so you had to pick which hand you wanted to fight with. Mariona, Dave touched on something really important there about the thing that scares me is kids and parents being preyed on, but kids in this country feeling like I'm not good enough yet. I've got to pick a sport. I've got to be good at 9, at 8, or else this isn't for me. Thierry Henry came with me on the election to speak to a big group at the convention, and he showed this incredible presentation about the Barcelona way. And he kept stopping during it. It was like 35 slides and said, have you heard winning yet? Have I said anything about winning? And he said, Barcelona's not about winning. And it sounds paradoxical, right? It sounds like an oxymoron. We win, and then that's what the gentleman's saying about Norway being so successful in the Olympics. Those are not connected. We win because the process is the right way. We play with joy. We play with belief. We play to support one another. You might not have as much experience here with what's happening with kids, but what do you feel? Is there a transition happening with kids in Spain where you feel like it's becoming about winning in competition too early?
Probably yes. I mean, there is quite a lot of pressure, and sports, especially soccer, in Spain is very popular. So all kids want to be a famous soccer player. And I think parents are not helping too much because there are too many expectations on children. Mm-hmm. But this just give us the strength to fight against that. Because it's very important to first develop the emotional and the relational skills to develop self-esteem of children, and then they will be able to do maybe not the best soccer player, but another profession that they would like. And I think that's the basic for individuals, but also for respect among a community. There is more and more tension between people from different origins, religions, etc. And I think we have to make an effort to fight against that. And sports for children is a great tool to learn that, because they can practice, can have fun while they're learning these values.
Yeah, and no one in this room, I mean, we don't have to oversell this room in terms of, we all know the conversion of when sport is in kids' lives, their attendance goes up, their grades go up, their health goes up. We see all these things, and I'm gonna embarrass him again, but JJ, I mentioned his story earlier, the head of Parks and Rec here, became an elite hockey player in a community that wasn't really playing hockey and found a free hockey program. It was a program in New York that said, the barrier to entry is too high for this sport. Let's start with free and see how it goes. And inevitably, an injury led to the end of his hockey career, and now he's leading a very important organization that's overseeing the opportunity for kids to get in. I mean, that's I think, the compounding social enterprise story we're talking about. 99.9% of the kids are not going to end up at Barcelona. I mean, 9% of kids are not going to end up at Division I schools. And that should not be the measuring stick. And I think when we prey on parents, I get asked all the time, and I'd love to hear what you guys think, and then we'll take a few questions from the crowd before we go down. But parents, I'm sure, ask you guys, my kid, what program should I put them in? Where should they go? And I always say the same thing. I say, ask them. Ask your kid, do you want to do this? Are you happy doing this? What do you want to be doing? And I know it's a tough balance because we feel we need to guide our kids on a path, but I just think more often than not, I see that parent in the video, abhorrent, and it was like embarrassing for the whole room to see what becomes of parents when the stakes are high. When the stakes are high, the costs go up, the parents lose that connection to understanding it was for their child, and the child gets disconnected from the power of sport and doesn't enjoy it anymore. Do you find parents coming to you saying, you're connected to a professional brand, so will this help create professional athletes? How do you separate that belief that because it's Barcelona, this becomes about driving kids up the development pyramid? If you both want to take a shot at that one.
What happens normally when we start a project elsewhere is that we have a row of kids with their parents thinking that we're looking for talent soccer players. And then when we explain them always very well that they're not going to learn any soccer technique, they're going to learn about values and life skills. They normally don't believe us, so they try, and then they realize that, yes, I mean, that's what it is. That's what we put the effort on. And sometimes we have had some annoyed parents saying,
I thought you were going to make my kid messy.
Yes, exactly. But the 99% of the cases, parents come back saying, thank you, kids have now better attitude, better behavior, better, is more responsible. So when talking with vulnerable communities, this is very nice to hear.
And hopefully they make the connection. That's why Messi's messy, is because of those values. That's why Mia Hamm is Mia Hamm, because of those values. And when you meet these people, you realize, talent takes you only so far. And do you guys face a similar thing of being tethered to, obviously, a big professional brand and the misconception that this is about developing athletes?
So less so for us. I mean, Mr. Wilson was a well-known commodity in Buffalo, less so Detroit, and people don't know the owners' names typically, unless there's controversy or some other issues around it. So it was less about Mr. Wilson's brand and more about Mr. Wilson's values, which is why I think it's so important Mariona's here. The most recognized sports brand in the world is represented by Mariona.
Mm-hmm.
And they've chosen to go out and promote the values, not the development of players, not winning, not watch us, not get commercial deals. It's about the values, and the rest follow. And in the U.S., we would take a great lesson if we'd watch what's happening with FC Barcelona.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I think we were going to do questions from the audience. I'm new at this. Rebecca Lowe normally does this. So do we have questions back there? Should I just get people to raise their hands? My mic working? Why don't we just go old school? Does anyone have a question with a loud voice? Okay, there's a spotlight, so I'm just going to trust that there's someone raising their hand over there. And okay, go for it. Yeah, that's really, really well said. Thank you for adding that. What does that make you?
I would like to add a comment to that, and I think it's been already also expressed in other panels, that we need to understand that sports needs to be fun for children.
Yeah.
If it's fun, children would like to play sports, because children, they just want to have fun. So this is one of the basics to make sure that we make this understandable.
Yeah, for sure.
My personal experience, I didn't have computers growing up. I didn't have an iPad. I didn't have a phone. I had grandma who said, get out in front of the TV set and get out and play. Don't come back till lunchtime. We need to start promoting our kids to go out and free play and encouraging it, but it's a very different era. We've got this very interesting passage of time where in many urban centers, we're afraid to send our kids out. We've got parts of the world where there's no access to playgrounds. There's not other kids out the same way. So we've got to deal with this issue of access and inclusion in a very, very different way, and we've got to hold cities and communities accountable for giving access. Philanthropy has to be part of building an access system, an inclusion system. We have to start rethinking this because grandma's not here anymore.
Yeah, and to really great point to add on to what you both said. Thing that gets a child most excited about something is observation. So even if you've never kicked a soccer ball, shot a basketball, thrown a baseball, tried to hit a slap shot, get out there and do it with your kid. I mean, I think that's the other thing that engages them. And met last night with James Siegel, who's the CEO of Kaboom, and you mentioned playgrounds. They're really trying to think through, we have to connect youth to adulthood. There's this big drop-off where all of a sudden play doesn't belong to you anymore, and they're trying to find ways to get parents active at the same time that you're trying to get kids active. And so, it's a good question where, ask your kids when there's a decision to be made. But before you're in these tough crossroads as a parent that come every day, just show them by being active yourself and getting out there and being involved. It's much more beneficial than sitting on the bleachers and yelling instructions at your kids, I'll tell you that. Well, one more question, and then we're going to have to... Yes?
Hey, Dave.
Arlo.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So, working in a lot of different spaces, what I realize is that a lot of people work in silos. You got business, community, government, and philanthropy for the most part. And it feels like sports is always kind of like siloed off to the side while you have wraparound services to support communities and the entire family, whether it be education, wellness, and whatnot. What needs to be done for people to start thinking about sports as part of the equation towards moving not only our communities, but our society forward as well, where those benefits come in? Chris Webber yesterday talked about some of the lessons and the disciplines and the steps that you embed in sports that you can bring into your household. So what are some of the steps for the sports to be a part of that conversation? Because it feels like it's on its own island, and everybody else is over here doing real work, thinking about education and thinking about reading at third grade levels, but they're forgetting about that component, specifically youth development and what it means to a household.
Yeah, really,
Talk about that.
really good question. And it's Project Play is demonstrative of what happens when you educate. I mean, part of this is a big educational mission. Dollars are there. It's connecting investment with impact. Bill Gates and his fund. Michelle Obama spoke incredibly about what activity can do for youth. How do you guys face this challenge of the educational need to help people see? Childhood obesity has tripled since the 70s. I mean, this is a true health epidemic, that the compounding effect of having a whole generation not playing and their kids, it could become a multi-billion-dollar health problem for this country. So how do you face the problem of educating people that sport is about health and wellness?
For us, it's mainstream. So because sports is the tool, it can help always to improve on healthy habits. And the way we always try to work is to link our work with the social service of the local communities, to make sure as well that those that are most in need are also tend to our projects. So we try to make these connections, but it's true that there's still a long way to go to make sure that the development of youth is thought in a holistic way.
Mm-hmm. So CSR is kind of what he's talking about, the social responsibilities of organizations. Why don't you have the last word on that?
So I'm struck by the complexity of the question. It's not as simple as how do we make the connections. It's a market and a belief response right now. Let's start with the policy implications. Let's get PE back in school. We're letting PE drop out of school, put in place by Teddy Roosevelt, who was a sick kid growing up, right? Let's put play back in school. We're doing work to get play in at recess again in an organized way, where we absolutely have to get play back as a part of the learning system. Then we get to the opportunities that I think Mariona and FC Barcelona bring. What are our pro teams and what are their leagues doing to make sure that we're not just promoting a single sport? What are we doing with Major League Baseball starting to do some work in this space? National Hockey League starting to do some work in this space. The pro teams have an opportunity to talk about all sports, all engagement, all access. And then we've got to make sure kids have places to play that are safe, and a lot of it involves parents. So this is a complex long-term game that involves multiple players.
Well, there's a school in Queens that hasn't had an athletic program for 20 years. So it's a systemic issue at an infrastructure level with some of these schools. Thank you guys so much for your time. I think, honestly, it's all of our efforts to go away from this and talk to departments of education, council members, Parks and Rec leaders, and say, we sort of demand this. We vote with our wallets and with our ability to push a button to keep people in positions that listen to us. So, showing up here is you demonstrating the effort to make sure we all get together and flying from Spain, and everyone being here to support the mission of opening up play and making sure kids enjoy this benefit. It's all of us. So thank you guys for spending the time with us, and thank you guys so much.